Hi, how are
Hello.
you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good, thanks.
Oh.
Happy to get started.
I know.
Yeah,
I'm ready to have a chat.
same.
A blanket statement will be read out. Each participant must hold up their paddle, indicating whether they agree or disagree. Thumbs up indicates agree, thumbs down indicates disagree. Participants will then be asked to discuss their reasons for their stance.
Hi, my name is Ewa and I'm 25.
Hi, my name is Motsi and I'm 23 years old.
I love culture. I love feeling like I'm part of something. I feel like there's a really big sense of community with Black people. Yeah, especially with UK Black people, it feels like it's like a thing and I'm part of that thing and that makes me feel really good. And I love my country and where I'm from. And all the culture and community that I get from that as well. Yeah.
What I love most about being Black is that everything comes from Blackness. Like, we are the beginning and the end. Cultures come from us, music comes from us, everything comes from us. So I just love the fact that my identity is tied to everybody's identity, even if they know it or acknowledge it.
On a year-to-year basis, I don't notice, but it's Black History Month.
You don't
No,
notice.
no, well, I actually have a response. It's not that I don't notice, right? But I don't, there's nothing that actively makes me feel like, oh, okay, now it's Black History Month.
Do you not think it's being shoved down your throat in the media anyway? Because that's when everyone comes alive and they're like, oh, Black people exist.
Black History Month. But that's the thing, I think that stuff exists, but sometimes I'm so out of the loop of that world that I'm not aware. If we actually had something that genuinely commiserated and genuinely acknowledged the experiences that Black people have had, if it didn't come from a really capitalist perspective, where it was oh, we're gonna be like Black History Month, so other people will buy from us, just like they do with Pride, and they capitalize Pride. If it's not that, then I don't actively because I don't see that many genuine expressions of oh, it's Black History Month, let's really try to educate ourselves.
No, it's not genuine at all. No. But I would just think because now we know, especially in the UK, okay, October, it's Black History Month. So that's interesting that you said. Fair enough.
Yeah. You know what? Because I think about it in the way, if I was living in rural Scotland, right, and I didn't have the same access to the internet, well, obviously everybody has access to the internet, but if I wasn't really on socials like that, or I didn't, wasn't really going out to shops and XYZ, then how would I actually?
Yeah, true. To be fair, I actually didn't know about Black History Month until I moved to England.
No way.
Yeah, I didn't know it was a thing. Yeah.
Oh my God! Sorry. What? So what? Oh my God.
Yeah. So, no, I grew up right outside of Glasgow as well, so it wasn't that rural, but I was one of 3 Black people in that whole area. Our family was one of 3. And but I didn't experience racism there either because there was so few of us that it just wasn't a thing. Wow. So it was when I came to England that was I was introduced to racism and Black History Month and all that. So
all in one really neat, tiny bow. Here you go.
Yeah,
that's fascinating.
Yeah,
so, did that shock you? Did that surprise you?
Yeah, because my sense of self, I've always just been Motsi, and my race is. Until I was 14 and moved to England, it wasn't attached to me in that way. I obviously knew that I was different to the other kids, but it wasn't something that was negative. And then when I came to England, it was oh, you're going to be treated badly because of this. And I think that's why I have so much passion for it, because I've had so many years of my life where I'm just treated as a white person would be treated. Yeah. That's why I'm so angry that racism's even a thing, because it doesn't have to be, and I've lived a life where it wasn't, if that makes sense. Yeah.
But now that when you go back to Scotland, do you experience that now?
No, still.
Really?
No. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Basically, as soon as I touched down in England, it was you are Black. I was really confronted with it and how I was treated by teachers and stuff. I remember my first week at school, I don't know, when you're a new person, they put you in top set for everything. And I'm not really good at maths, but the teacher didn't know that. Anyway, went into the maths class and the teacher was like, your people can't be in here. And I went, wait a minute, like, what is she talking about? And then I had like my first parents' evening and they were like, oh yeah, she'll be lucky if she gets D's. And my mum was like, what is this based on? Because I've just moved to the school. You've never seen me work. You've never seen anything. So yeah, I think the part of Essex that we live in as well is very overtly racist. That's when I was kind of like confronted with, okay, the color of my skin actually has a really big impact on my identity. And my sister is 8 years younger than me. And I've seen the difference in how she views herself and how I view myself. Like, I've grown up without racism. So like, I have such a strong sense of self. I'm like really confident. Whereas like, she grew up with racism and from a really young age, and the way she views herself is like really different. So yeah.
The next step was Black history should be taught in schools.
Well, yeah. Ding ding. We are agreed.
Yeah.
You know, I read Akala's book, and where he's basically talking about like race and class and how the two intersect. And like that really changed. I read it in lockdown, pre-Black Lives Matter. So it really changed like my perspective of how education actually works and what it can lead to. So in this country, because we don't really teach, like, we teach colonization, but from a really specific perspective. Mm-hmm. We don't really teach like Black history that isn't connected to America and isn't connected to slavery. Mm-hmm. And even then, we rarely teach it from the perspective of those that were enslaved, as opposed to like, those that were enslaved. Instead, we'll hear it from like academics of the time, or sometimes even descendants of slave owners themselves. So it's all like shaped in a specific way in order to like let the public not be clocked on. Mm-hmm. And because of that, this cycle keeps continuing, which is Black people, non-white people, those are the global majority, being like, this is not right. We are still suffering. There's still racism that exists in this country. And a lot of white people being like, no, that's not true. That doesn't exist. Racism is solved. Racism was solved when we dissolved slavery. But because the intricacies of history aren't being taught, that knowledge isn't passed over. And it means that as a society, like, we're constantly being put into these different fractions. Mm-hmm. There's no joining together of ideas because we all have different versions of history.
Yeah, exactly. So I think even if it were to be taught in schools, it would have to, like, whoever's teaching it would have to kind of decolonize their own mind before doing that. Like, I still kind of fall into thinking patterns where I'll think like how a white person would think and how they would perceive me. So, like, if you're gonna teach children, you need to like make sure that you've checked your own lens and how you're teaching them, because it's all good and well if you teach the subject, but if you're still reproducing the same systems in the way that you're teaching because of your own viewpoints, then it's actually not doing anything, So I think a lot of work needs to be done, and it's hard work, and I think a lot of people don't want to do it, to be honest. But I think even if it was like a superficial Black history, I think it would be good, because if for a non-Black child, it would just be good for them to be aware.
Definitely. And also to start to like address their own unconscious bias and the natural, like this whole thing about natural thinking patterns that they fall into. Because if they never know why those things might be there, they're just going to go around thinking, well, that's normal.
Exactly.
It's normal that I see a Black person in a hoodie and I assume that they're probably going to rob me. Do you know what I mean? That's just, unfortunately, that's just life. Like, that's just stuff that's been programmed from descendants and descendants. And people believing the same thing. But I also think this country, they don't want to teach that, because it means that they will have to turn. Everything that you're saying about work, there's all this unfurling that has to go on, right? Because the teachers all have to have a specific amount of training and learning in order to like get rid of the biases that they have. There's a reason why like Black boy. I think there's a statistics that like Black boys are like two times more likely to be excluded from school than their white counterparts. And that's not to do with the statistics of how much they learn. That's to do with the teachers, the unconscious bias that they hold, and how they're more likely to expel a young Black boy that's had 3 misdemeanors than someone who's carried weapons and stuff into school, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
That's generalization, but, you know.
Black History Month should be more than 1 month.
I actually don't know.
I'm
like...
this is where I am.
For who? Like, what for
Thank
who?
you. Yeah.
Like, that's what came to my head. Like, longer than 1 month for who?
For who? And who does that benefit?
Exactly.
And how? What was the purpose?
Exactly.
How is that going to improve my quality of life?
Exactly. If it's every single month we're funding Black people, then keep it
Yeah,
going.
great.
But realistically,
yeah,
no. Yeah, that's actually how I think Black History Month should be.
Yeah.
I think it should be like a time for goal setting, and the next October it's like, okay, let's review the goals. Have we met them? It should be like an audit.
Yeah.
You know, like you know how we've got like the sustainable development goals. It's like, okay, we've got goals for how Black Britain is going to look in 5-10 years time. And if we're using that month to set and evaluate what we did last year and the year before, then we'll actually like start doing stuff. Whereas the way it is now, it's like, we remember, we thank, and then it's like, okay, it's like it's not doing exactly. It's not doing anything. So.
Yeah, I think that's really intelligent. You talking about it like an audit for me feels like it's more purposeful and goal orientated.
Exactly.
Other than that, it's just going to be more of the same.
Exactly.
And I also feel like my hesitancy towards let's make it more than a month is it becomes this thing that feels like, oh, it's special. Knowing Black history is special, and we're allocating it to specific particular moments in time or particular months. Whereas actually what we're talking about is long-term change. What we're talking about is like initiatives that need to be implemented into Parliament and implemented into our schools and our educational system and implemented into like corporate workplaces. That's like longevity, and that stuff just needs to apply to our day-to-day life. But if it starts becoming about a month, it just feels like, okay, so if we're saying it's going to be October, November, December, what, January, February, we're back to basic racism in Britain.
Exactly. So
yeah, I think it would be counterproductive to the progress that I think we're trying to achieve.
Exactly.
Black History Month has helped to break down barriers for Black people.
Has helped.
I can't answer that. So
I think I'm going to agree with you. Yeah.
It makes me think about this whole thing that you're saying about the audit. It should feel like just when everything was going down in lockdown and a lot of employers had to release like the data of the different types of ethnicities that they had. That was like clear data that you could be like, okay, cool. That from this I can see that you clearly have an issue with diversity within your building. You need to get more non-white people. You need to get more women. You need to get more, non-female identifying people. However you want to frame it. But there is no data. Yeah. It's just a month and it happens.
To me, like Black History Month is like Cultural Awareness Month.
Yeah.
Where like Johnny in his big office job is going to get to try jollof for the first time.
Yeah.
You know? Like that's kind of how I view it. It's like, okay, guys, like let's get a speaker in. Let's eat this food. Listen to this playlist. Bob's your uncle. Yeah. Like it feels like Cultural Awareness Month more than we're actually going to do something for Black people.
Yeah.
I think it's more geared at exposing non-Black people to Black people.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I think that's really interesting. Because I don't think it's framed for Black people.
I don't think it is.
Black History Month isn't for Black people.
No.
All that performative, let's remember. Who is that for?
Exactly.
And then what do you do with that, with said remembrance? What do you do with that information? I think you're right. Like, that's why I can't say that it's necessarily helped anyone. Even initiatives that are somehow contained within Black History Month that are there to help other Black people are often created by other Black people.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's like, well, what benefit do we get? It feels like it should be something, okay, it's Black History Month, which means this is going to happen. And we're going to make sure we hit this quota, even though that sounds like really, what's the word, cold, but we're going to hit this quota to make sure that we're actually helping other Black people within our country. So we're actually helping the Black community.
Yeah,
so we're actually giving spaces for them to also, because we have things to sort out.
Exactly.
Racism is one thing.
Exactly.
Intercultural madness is another.
We spend more money on wigs than we do on like anything else, and like Black women spend more money on wigs and Black men on cars, and we don't even nowhere in the Western world do we have a Black bank or anything like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like there's so much that we need to do.
Yeah.
We actually need this month to just get that funding and get those audits and targets and treat it like capitalism.
Treat it like capitalism. Yeah. Like, if you're gonna do that, then let's do it. Let's do it seriously. I agree. Wow, no, I didn't know that. I had no idea, but now I've learned. I'm like, wow, that's really cool. I think it's interesting because I think, like, male, well, that's so like heteronormative, but male female relations within the Black community are actually like really interesting from a like deeply cultural perspective and from a diasporic perspective. So I think whilst part of me is like, oh, that's great, I think there's a lot of learning and discussion that I hope is being had if that is said theme, because I think there's a lot that we need to repair and look at within the community. So it's a mixed bag.
Celebrities / public figures should have more of a responsibility when it comes to spreading awareness around.
I'm gonna say no.
Oh, I feel so bad. Sorry.
So Motsi, you got your arms down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do you disagree?
Because I don't think every Black person is in a position to represent the voices of all Black people or to like spread cultural awareness. 1, 2, you don't go into, not everybody goes into something with the agenda of doing it for Black people. Like, unfortunately, not everybody is as selfless to think about the community. A lot of people are just thinking about themselves. So, and just because someone's famous doesn't mean, like they're capable to represent me or the people around me well. You know, like, you are famous because, wow, you can kick that ball or you can sing or you can do whatever, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you can represent this whole entire community and help us move in different ways. Yes, some celebrities do it amazingly. Some I won't name, but I don't feel like do it as well, you know? So that's why I'm like, I don't think so. But why did you say yeah?
Well, I felt, because I fundamentally, I don't believe that all Black people should be there at the front of the thing, being on the podium, fighting for Black rights just because they have a platform. That feels like an unfair amount of responsibility for something that isn't their fault or something that they're born into. However, I just think, like, you can't negate the fact that once you're in the public eye, there is a certain amount of visibility that you have, right? In a way that other people that may actually be career activists or may actually be going out of their way or putting their lives in danger to fight for the cause do not, and therefore are more likely to end up losing their life or are more likely to be taken away and put into jail and not allowed to see anyone or speak to anyone or not receive a trial date for years on end, you know? And I think because of that, whilst I don't think like it's like you must, I do think you understand that you have power in that position. So therefore, like, it's up to you how you decide to use said power. And also, because we're actually because racism is actually in the grand scheme of history, a relatively new concept. And therefore, mixed race relations in this country particularly is still, in the grand scheme of history, a new concept. Black people in positions of power is also a new concept in the West. So there's always the first Black person to do this, or I'm the first Black person that's been the pioneer for this, which means that in you doing that, regardless of whether that's a positive thing or not, like, what you are doing is somehow affecting, opening or shutting doors for people, which isn't about, oh yeah, you need to be on your best behavior. The actions that you do mean that these 10 other Black people are going to end up never having a job. I don't think that's unfair. But I do think there's a sense of, like, if there is a sense of injustice and you have capacity to challenge that, to somehow protest in the way that works for you in that moment, there is a trickle effect that then happens.
Okay.
For other people that are coming behind you. But I also know, like, I am a deeply, like, community-based
Exactly,
person. So
yeah.
that's me. Like, that's
like
how
I have some like a friend who she's going to be extremely successful in what she does, like extremely. But we are so different. Like, she is a selfish person, which some people are, and it's okay. And I know that she's not going to open doors for other Black people in what she's doing. So that's why I'm saying that, like, I don't think everyone actually has it within themselves to open that door. Some people are so desperate to just get in that they're like, oh, I made it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care if it shuts. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so, like,
totally.
I totally get what you are saying, but I also think you're talking from how you feel.
Yeah, very much.
You know, and the type of person you are. But we have to understand as well that not everybody is like us. If everyone was like this, the world would be great. But yeah.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
That's what I said. But.
Next one, we're going deeper.
God.
Black men.
Oh.
What an divisive statement. That's so intense. Okay. Oh, God. Black men don't do enough to protect Black women in society. That's the question.
Yeah, I'm going to have to say yes.
Sorry to the room.
Speaker.
I think for Black men to start protecting us, they need to start protecting each other. And I think that there's, like, obviously a crisis in masculinity and whatnot. And Black masculinity is such a complicated thing that I don't think that it's intentional that Black men don't protect us in the ways that we want them to. I don't think it's intentional. I think they're doing the best with what they have. So I think, yeah, they need to start protecting one another and opening space for one another to be vulnerable and actually, like, understand their own masculinity before they can start to protect our femininity or, like, our identity as women.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope that made sense.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Total sense. And I agree with you. I personally think that I've met a lot of Black men. A lot of them are my friends, you know, my dad, ex-partners, whatever. Like, I met a lot of them who are so well-intentioned and maybe want to do that, but like have so much unlooked at trauma or things or habits that they've settled into that actually come from a really unhealthy place. But all of that is just locked in them. And then because that isn't addressed, like, there's no way that you can even begin to know how you might be harming us in your actions because you haven't addressed or understood, like, the things that are going on with you. And I think that's an epidemic.
Yeah.
Like, it's really interesting, like, the amount of, like, specifically bouncers, but I think that's a microcosm for, like, the bigger thing. The amount of bouncers that I've gotten into arguments with about stupid nonsense, but they're always Black. They're always Black men. And the way that they treat me in comparison to how they'll treat someone, even someone that's of mixed heritage or someone that's non-white, someone that's Latino, the way I see them treat me in a different way than they treat me and other Black women, especially, like, the darker you are, it's like the gradient of the treatment gets worse.
Exactly.
And I just think, like, even understanding that, like, where does that come from? Because if I break that thing down, you as a bouncer or security are in a position of power. You can decide whether or not I get let in, whether or not I get chucked out, whatever. Because by proxy, that's what the role entails. I, in some way, have to come to you and you have to give me the okay to get inside. However, because you have that sense of power, you are choosing to wield it in particular ways depending on the color of my skin, even though we are the same, even though I look like your mother.
Don't you think, though, that your identity as a Black woman, it confronts Black men with their identity?
Yeah.
Like, totally. I think that's what the issue is, you know? Like, even if we're talking about, like, dating and romance and whatnot, like, emphasis on the some Black men would rather be with a white woman because it's just easier. They're not every day being confronted with their own identity. So if he's waking up next to you, another Black woman, and he has all these thoughts about himself, you know, he's constantly being confronted with that. Like your existence is like triggering in a way, if that makes sense. So like, I think that's why, they're just not able to like protect us in the way that we need. Like, ultimately, I want to be with a Black man, but I sometimes think this Black man want to be with me.
Bro, I'm telling you that for free. I love Black men. I love Black men, but my God, it's tumultuous. It's actually tumultuous. I feel like, especially because a lot of Black women are preconditioned to protect them. Like, we don't have a choice.
Exactly.
That kind of thing is taught to us from a very young age. As a Black woman, part of your role in life is to protect other Black men, which is why you'll take toxic nonsense that you wouldn't take from people of other races. Right?
Exactly.
But then there's because they have no recognition or I don't know. That's a generalization. But sometimes in these situations, it feels like you don't see that. And therefore you are acting how you want to act without understanding that your actions mean that I am here trying constantly to protect you. A lot of the time at the detriment of myself.
Exactly. I feel like to build a Black man up, a Black woman has to be knocked down. Just a little bit.
Really? That's so sad.
It is. It actually is. It actually is. And that's why I'm like, do Black men even want me? Because I'm not, it's just difficult. But I think a lot of work within Black men needs to happen for them to be able to like protect us in the way that we need and deserve.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And I just think there's a lot of like, I think there's a real lack of like honest conversation in between us. There's a real lack of discourse, and I've always believed like this gap that happens, or this gap that it feels like there is between us. In order to overcome that, it's about constant conversation. And it's like, as a community, we have to unpick. We have to understand what that generational trauma is. How is it affecting our ability to relate? Why is there such a high amount of like domestic violence within Black and Black households? Why do I see Black women after years and years of being with someone literally unable to function as a full human being because they molded themselves to their partner because that's what's expected, and that could be my parents, that could be my friend. Like, I see that constantly. Because I was asking those questions and wanting to like actually actively respond to them, but whether that's going to happen, I think a lot of us come from households where we're taught that the model of a good relationship looks like a woman somehow molding, shifting, giving things up in order for the man to succeed and thrive. And that's usually like at the expense of herself, giving up things for herself, so she can be the correct mother, so she can be the trophy wife, XYZ. And I think that trope or that kind of like positionality has been fed or trickled down generationally. So now we kind of exist like in the society where I think that happens in a lot of relationships. It's just not spoken about. And a lot of the time, it's also veiled with the cover of religion and like what it says in the Bible and how the Proverbs, whatever wife. I grew up in the church, but I can't remember the verses. But you know what I mean? Like all of that rhetoric. It's just, I think, it's just ingrained into our culture, and it actually means that I see a lot of unhappy relationships with women that are like repressed in different ways, whether that's like within their lives, whether that's sexually, just a lot of repression.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think it comes from, so I was saying like in the beginning when they asked us like who's our favorite person from history, and I mentioned Frantz Fanon. He wrote a book called Black Face, White Mask, and it talks about how when we were colonized, obviously Black men were chiefs, they were in power, and then here comes this white man and he's now the symbol of power. So now ever since we've been decolonizing to an extent, Black men see whiteness as power, like anything white equals power. Even that's why some Black men are like, oh, I've actually heard Black men say, I want to have kids with a white woman because my children will have a better chance in the world because of the color of their skin. So I think, yeah, it is like self-hate in the sense that like our identities have actually been completely broken down, that your proximity to power and to being respectable is being more like a white man, you know? And then you project that. And I also like said in the first questions that we got asked that like Black women are so proud of being Black and we're the ones who preserve culture, that I'm not trying to be like a white woman, no disrespect to them, but like I love being a Black woman. You're trying to be like me, like, you know what I mean? So I think there's that disconnect. So with Black men, it's like they just want to be close to power, and power is whiteness, whereas Black women just want to be Black women, you know? So there's that like constant conflict. And I think it does kind of lead to self-hate in a way. And
I don't know, I think my thing is like, well, it has to be self-hate, because why sometimes I think, why don't you like me? Not like me in a romantic sense, but like your actions are like on a really basic level. If we were 5-year-olds, your actions tell me that you don't like me, but I am the same color of skin as your parent, your auntie, the other women in your life. Like I'm a direct, like what you were saying, I'm a direct mirror of you. So what is it about me that you don't like about yourself? Because that's why you're using me as a tool or a vessel to look at, or analyze those things that you don't like in yourself. So it's okay for you to discard me or treat me how you want, because it's not you.
Exactly.
Those things.
It's tricky.
Tricky is the word.
My favorite Black people in history are Nelson Mandela, because I'm South African, and then Frantz Fanon, who's an author, and he's written about how the Black identity can sometimes be stuck in white psychology, and the movie Get Out was actually based on what he's written. So I would say like those two. Yeah. Definitely.
How do you feel right now? What state do you think we're in terms of our relationship?
I think it's just like Black women are saying, you guys need to do this, and Black men are saying, you guys need to do this. And it's just like, can we just like pause for a minute and actually listen to each other, rather than like trying to battle of, oh, a woman should play this role and a man should play this role. Like I don't think we're working together at the minute. It's just who's got the loudest voice. It's just a bit sad.
And also it feels like a lot of that conversation or a lot of that finger pointing is such a distraction, because it feels like that a lot of that stuff feels so surface.
Literally.
And really, I should be asking myself, like, why is it that experiences that I've had with women in the past, I'm putting them on you and you're doing your fault? Why do I feel like you need to present yourself in a particular way? And that's on both sides. Why, as a woman, do I feel like as a man you need to present yourself in a particular way for you to even be worthy of being in my presence? Like, those are really, I feel like they were such deep-seated questions, and we're not even talking about it. So everybody's just on opposite sides of the spectrum, and no actual conversation is happening.
You're right. The conversation is really distracting, because like the conversation is about what we can extract from one another rather than like how we can work together. You know, it's like, oh, you guys should give us this amount of money and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, but that's not solving any of the actual issues. Like, I just, I don't know.
No,
it's not looking good.
It's not looking good. I'm gonna say I'm more like this, but I think
I'm like in the middle. Like, because I think there's the facade of equality, but we're actually not like equal. Like I was saying to my mom, something that I struggle with here, like being here in England, is that like I can go 8 days, 10 days and feel like, oh yeah, they love me. Like they don't think anything of me. But then I apply for a job and I'm reminded again, oh no, we don't want you. You know, like I think that like Black History Month is another great way of creating the facade of like, we're all integrated, we're all working together. But then it's you're not going to get a job because of your name. You're not going to get a job because of how you look or how you speak, or do you know what I mean? Like I think it's nice that we have this like, facade of like change, but I actually don't really think deep down things are really changing that drastically for us, you know? Yeah.
I'm there with you. And I also think I think heading towards an equal society is going to take a lot longer than we think, or perhaps like the governments think. And actually, like, there needs to be. It's like, if you want to do that, then you need to have an equality council, and you need to have a really long-term plan about how that works. But I think what I'm seeing at the moment is a lot of like reactive action. Black Lives Matter, that was so reactive. You know, obviously like a horrible thing that happened, but then what you saw was like people just like, oh, as an organization, I need to post a statement, so I'm just going to post anything, and them just like reacting as quickly as they can, so they can be seen to be on the right side of history, or being seen to be doing something and actually doing it are two different things, especially from a corporate perspective. And I feel like in order for us to do that, it's a long-term work that needs to be implemented 100%. And then followed through.
Exactly.
And then actually actioned.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I don't really.
And I feel it's like every society was built on oppression. Like even Mansa Musa, when he was dripping in gold, like there were people being oppressed. So it's like, is equality even feasible? You know, like I think we should be striving for like equity more than equality, because I don't actually think, like, societies always have hierarchies. There's always going to be the people right at the bottom and the people right at the top. I think what we need is just racial equity and the opportunity to get more Black people at the top and in the middle rather than like at the bottom, you know. The big things that actually impact our well-being, which is like finances at the end of the day, like you're reminded that you are not valued, you're not wanted. But in the small things, like day-to-day interactions, it's like, no, we really care about you, we are one. And like, yeah, that's what I meant. I meant like in the grand things that can actually change my life in a meaningful way, aka give me money so I can help my family, help people back home. I'm reminded that actually doesn't, like, we don't want you. But then in small things, like I can get a coffee and be showered with compliments by a white person, you know?
Final statement. Personally, I could do more for Black History Month.
Good question.
Personally, I could do more for Black History Month.
I don't know. That's
like this Black History Month or every Black History Month?
I'm gonna say no.
Yeah.
Because anything I'll do is not just gonna be exclusive to this month.
Yeah.
So that's why, like, I'm saying no.
Yeah. I think I'm also gonna say no. I think I'm gonna say no because I don't have capacity to do that. Sometimes I feel like my entire existence is politicized, and somehow I'm always having to be the pioneer or be the change maker just by like breathing. So it's like, what more could I give, and at what cost? Which is not to say like I'm like amazing, but you know, but I think that sentiment could probably be echoed by a lot of Black women.
Yeah. No, I get what you mean. I think sometimes it's very rare that we get to see the fruits of our labor. But when we do, for me personally, it makes me want to keep going. Like at my graduate university, I did like a decolonization campaign, and I basically like was trying to diversify the staffing, the curriculum, the library, and everything like that. And I didn't do it for me because I was graduating, so I was like, I'm not going to see any of these changes. I was doing it for the next generation. And I was asked to speak there this week, actually. And this Black girl came up to me and she was like, oh, are you Motsi? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, oh, thank you so much for like everything that you've done. Like, we actually now have regular decolonization, like discussions and all this stuff. And I felt really emotional because like while I was doing it, it was really painful. And like, I was getting abused from like old white men, like sending me emails at 3 a.m. and stuff like that. And I think for me, just knowing that your efforts are not in vain is what kind of like keeps me going. Totally. So with that statement, it's like my efforts are not limited to 30 days.
To the whole month of October.
Yeah,
and then it's
like
done,
if anything, Black History Month's when I start to shut up because I'm like the media are gonna do more. Like I don't need to say anything.
This is like people take on the burden, and then I'll come back in November.
Literally, so and then that was all bullshit. Let's start again. You know. So yeah. That question.
Thank you both.
I just realized my act. Really good. I want to keep going.
I know. Chat more.
You just watch Hard Truths, real people, and even realer conversations. If you like what you watched, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and tune in to the next one.